Tonight on this special edition Draft Game Plan.
The New Orleans Saints select.
It's intercepted. This is Vaccaro.
Immediate impact players are the priority for the Super Bowl or bust Saints. We're looking at what prospects can tip the scales in favor of New Orleans. Plus,
4-4 flat right there. That's a great number for him.
Odell Beckham Jr. headlines LSU's class. We're breaking down all the Tigers heading to the league, as well as locals projected to go at the top.
The number one pick, hopefully they'll take me.
Or just hoping to go at all.
It's just time to wait and see if we can hear our name being called.
So get settled in because we are on the clock.
The Fox 8 Draft Game Plan is sponsored in part by Voodoo Barbecue, First American Bank, and Take 5 Oil Change.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome. Glad you could be with us, and we certainly hope the off-season is treating you well. 'Tis the off-season to be jolly. Time now for the NFL Draft, which finally starts, tomorrow. Alongside Sean Fazan, I'm Fred Hickman.
And Fred, you said it. It's finally here. The schedule is set. Free agency has basically run its course. And after a 2-week delay this year, it is finally time for the 78th NFL Draft. In 2013, the Saints had the 15th overall selection and put it to good use.
Kenny Vaccaro, defensive back, Texas.
He may not have been the consensus prediction among the Who Dat Nation, but he gained fans fast with aggressive play in training camp and big playmaking in Rob Ryan's scheme.
That's right. And you hear a lot about how important the 06 class was to this franchise's success. Last year could rate right up there with it. Armstead is the left tackle of the future. We all know that. John Jenkins put in solid work and should be an anchor for years to come at his spot. Perhaps the biggest impact on offense, though, was Kenny Stills, who led the league in yards per reception among wide receivers with more than 20 catches. And with more on the Saints draft philosophy, here's our own Saints analyst, Jim Henderson.
As Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis harvest their 9th draft class, the focus of the fans and the media will be on their first selection. And that focus will become more blurry with the tedium of each passing round and the greater anonymity of the players selected on the second and third day of the draft. Though the temptation to move up from the 27th position will be there will probably be more opportunity to trade down.
In their previous 8 drafts, the Saints moved up marginally in the first round in 08 to take Cedric Ellis. A bigger gamble came 3 years later,
trading their number 1 choice in 2012 to New England for the opportunity to get back in the first round in 2011 to select Mark Ingram, a move to date that would have to be considered disappointing at best. They have been far more active in the draft later. For the second straight year, their 7th-round pick was shipped elsewhere for the immediate help the previous season at linebacker, necessitated by injury. If there is a drafting game plan in the Payton era, it appears to be this: stay put early, get active late.
We've had opportunities to trade, oftentimes later round picks for, players that can have more of an immediate and shorter term impact, and we've done that. Look, we know there's a cost to that, obviously, in terms of having a younger player that may be a special teams guy for you for a few years and develop into a starter. But I think, look, part of our confidence in trading away some of those later picks is the success that we've had in the college free agent market.
On Saturday, as the draft winds down and brains get numb and number, the Saints must stay attentive. The hay isn't yet all in the barn, and neither are all the horses. 6 undrafted rookies were on the opening day roster last season. 2 more were on the practice squad. Post-draft acquisitions under Payton have included Pierre Thomas, Junior Gillette, Travaris Cadet, Glenn Foster, Tim Lolito, and Kyrie Robinson. With each team allowed to spend $80,000 on undrafted free agent signing bonuses, the Saints have a post-draft game plan, recruiting free agents based on price and opportunity, citing the team's history as a meritocracy. You perform, you play, and you stay, no matter how you arrived.
We've had, a history of success. We can point to a number of guys on our team that have been given the opportunity by our coaches, regardless of how they got here, to be successful, and I think that resonates with, with the agents and the players that are undrafted.
Paying close attention to the undrafted free agent market has enabled the Saints to get younger, deeper, and cheaper in regards to the salary cap. Expect and hope that trend continues after this weekend's draft is put to bed and before the scouts are this weekend. Jim Henderson, Fox 8 Sports.
Great insight from you, Jim. Thanks as always. Larry Holder of the Times-Picayune and NOLA.com joins us now. And Larry, I want to get your take on trades, trading up, trading back. If the Saints do make a trade, which way do they go?
I think in this draft they would trade down, and it's not the same as what they've done historically. They've traded up for players, and it hasn't worked. You look at Cedric Ellis, you look at Mark Ingram, and the last time they were at 27, they actually took a receiver in 2007, and it was Robert Meacham, and it didn't really work out there. So to me, I think they would trade down, and it has to do with the quarterbacks that are left on the board and the teams at the top of the second round. I think a lot of those teams, depending on, say, if the Texans stay at 1 and take Jadeveon Clowney, they would probably like a quarterback, and they might want one at the end of the first round. They can move up. Jacksonville can move up. Oakland can move up. Cleveland can move up. It just depends on the board. I think moving back would best suit them if they move. I'm not going to say they are, but if that's the case, if you're giving me one or the other, I think they move down.
We'll consult one of your 9 mock drafts for further insights into that.
I never had them moving down in any of them.
That's right. All right, Sean, let's say that they stay exactly where they are at 27. Who do you see them going?
I'm staying with my guy. I'm going with Brandon Cooks, wide receiver out of Oregon State. I love what he brings. Quickness, explosiveness, exceptional run after catch ability. Not to mention, Fred, a 40-yard dash like yours. 4.3 in the 40 at the combine. Brandon Cooks is the player I've stuck with in my last 2 mock drafts, and I'm staying with him. I just hope he's available when the Saints pick at 27.
All right, Larry, they're at 27. You're on the clock. What do you do?
Well, you better trade up for Brandon Cooks, and that's why I've never taken him, because I think he's going to be off the board. I've stuck with this guy, and as Fred has alluded to, I've probably done literally 9 or 10 mock drafts. And the last 4 or 5, I've stuck with Marquise Lee from USC, someone who, when you have a capable quarterback, Matt Barkley, his numbers were off the charts. And when he didn't, his numbers were down. He was injured in his junior year. But I think at that spot, he will be the best player left on the board, and the Saints need a receiver. He can come in, get great rapport with Drew Brees, and really can maybe build a young nucleus with, say, a Kenny Stills. And he can also return kicks. And ironically enough, he injured his knee, the big injury that everyone's kind of shying away from. He injured it on a kick return. So maybe people are kind of shying away. But no, I'm sticking with Marquise Lee, USC wide receiver, because, look, I love Brandon Cooks, but I don't think he's going to be there. So
you might be right. You might be right.
Well, and we all know that the first round is not where the Saints really do shine. They really get rolling when they get into the middle rounds, the late rounds. So let's talk about day 2 and what the Saints are looking at as far as needs there.
Well, it really depends, and if it goes the way Sean and I are thinking, if it's wide receiver, I think they easily look defense. They could look cornerback. I'm looking at maybe Stanley Jean-Baptiste from Nebraska, maybe Pierre Desir from Lindenwood, maybe a guy like Keith McGill from Utah, or they could look pass rusher. Really depends, but I think they would totally turn the tables on defense. But if you flip-flop it, they could look wide receiver if they go defense in the first round. So a lot of variables we're dealing with here in the second round and third rounds as well.
Hey. And I'm in complete agreement with you. Obviously, it all depends on what happens in round 1, but I think here is where you see a pass rusher and a cornerback come off the board, not necessarily in that order. In my final mock draft, I had Trent Murphy, outside linebacker out of Stanford, and Pierre Desir, cornerback out of Lindenwood. Other names to consider, you mentioned it, Stanley Jean-Baptiste from Nebraska, or even a Marcus Smith, the outside linebacker, pass rusher type out of Louisville.
If you ask me, Desir is a guy who really fits the Saints' history as well. Small school guy, middle rounds, Saints do well. All they're looking for, I would think, are system guys.
There's no doubt about it. Interesting options. If all goes as planned, the Saints will be on the clock for their first pick about 23 hours from now. Larry Holder, the Times-Picayune and NOLA.com. Thank you, sir, for your time. Coming up on the draft game plan, we head up I-10 to take a look at another deep crop of LSU prospects. In the meantime, head over to fox8live.com to check out my full black and gold mock draft strategy. On day 3, I've got the Saints 126th overall in the 4th round. Wide receiver Brandon Coleman from Rutgers, 6'5" wide receiver with serious size. In the 5th round, linebacker Jordan Zumwalt of UCLA, a bit of a football maniac. Zumwalt can bring some nasty to this defense. He can also play all linebacker positions. Also in the 5th round, I like it from the start, Brian Stork, center from Florida State. Stork fills the need and played at the highest level last year for BCS champion Florida State. And finally, in the 6th round, safety from North Carolina, Trey Boston.
The Fox 8 Draft Game Plan is sponsored in part by Voodoo Barbecue, First American Bank, and Take 5 Oil Change.
Barkevius Mingo, defensive end, LSU.
Started from the bottom, now the whole team here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now my whole team in. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now the whole team here.
Man, it sure seemed like a whole team of Tigers went to the NFL a year ago. 9, in fact, were drafted. But this year's group could rival that number. With more on that, here's Chad Sabity.
It's become the annual trend at LSU. Talented Tigers leaving school a year early for the NFL draft.
People always tell me that is that Coach Miles' pitch, the 3-and-out thing. And when you have great coaches, like Coach Miles and the coaching staff that they have, when they recruit high caliber players like myself and other guys that's along with me in this draft class, it's kind of expected,
Both Jarvis Landry and Jeremy Hill are in that number, capping off productive junior seasons to make the leap to the professional ranks.
Working so hard, working your entire life for this moment, and it's right in front of you. You just, so many emotions that go through your mind, and I think the main one has just been excitement.
It's been an up and down year for Hill, who was arrested last spring, but was proactive in reaching out to all 32 NFL teams about his off-the-field issues.
I mean, I've matured as a man, and if you talk to anyone who's been around me for the past year, they can speak, volumes about the character that I have, and think any of these teams have anything to worry about. And just talking with them, they don't really have anything to worry about, and everyone's pretty much past it. So, once I get picked up, just going to work and all that stuff is in the past and can't change it. So all we can do is get better and keep moving forward from it.
A pair of Tiger teammates have just recently made headlines with reports of failed drug tests from the NFL Combine. Quarterback Zach Mettenberger and defensive tackle Anthony Johnson may see their stock fall, though both of their agents deny their clients did anything wrong. Headlining the group of departing Tigers is New Orleans native Odell Beckham Jr., who is expected to be a first-round selection. Beckham knows he's in for a big night tomorrow, but there still is a high level of uncertainty.
For the most part, I try not to look at it just because you never know how draft day can go. So you can supposed to be going here, and you never know how it's going to end up. So, praying for the best, but, prepare for the worst.
Whether the rest go in the 2nd or 7th round, they all just want a chance to achieve their childhood dream.
Be able to support my family and let them see the way that my hard work and my dedication to some sport that I love and through school, and through all that adversity that I've overcame in my life, that, I can make a positive out of it and do great things for that Landry brand.
And joining me now, Jim Klein-Peter of NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Jim, you've been around these LSU Tigers many years. It's another banner group of talent going into the NFL draft. First round, all projections seem Odell Beckham, the New Orleans native, is really the only surefire LSU first-round selection this year.
Yeah, he's really come up since the end of the season. He's tested well. He's done everything. He looked great on film. They knew he was fast just from watching him on film, and he proved it at the Combine. But I don't think he's going to get past the New York Jets at 18, and he could easily go higher than that.
Fellow wideout Jarvis Landry didn't have a great 40-yard dash at the Combine, ran much better at Pro Day. He seems to have his stock rising a little bit more going into this weekend's draft.
Yeah, he ran great times at Pro Day, and that really helped him. But I think, again, they knew that he was fast, and they knew he'd run better than a 4.77, and he ran 4.58 on back-to-back 40s. He's completely different from Odell, though. He's that short yardage guy. He's tough over the middle, great strong hands, doesn't mind blocking. He's a tough football player.
And, of course, the man that got them the ball this past 2 years, Zach Mettenberger, coming off the ACL injury, looked pretty good at Pro Day. What round may he go in this weekend?
I'm solid on the 2nd round for him. What happens is the way scouts will tell you, quarterback is an overvalued position, and what happens is you can put a grade on a guy, a 3rd or 4th round grade, but when they start going off the board, teams start saying, well, it's time for us, we got to get our quarterback pretty soon.
Jeremy Hill, the running back, very talented young man. A lot of off-the-field issues in the past, but seems to be focused on his future in the NFL. perhaps he could be a steal being selected in one of the mid-rounds, 3rd or 4th round.
Yeah, and just the opposite of quarterback. Running back is an undervalued position because, especially his type of back, not a lot of NFL teams like the power backs anymore. There are a lot of spread teams, and they prefer the smaller, more agile backs that can get out, catch a pass. I think Jeremy did a great job of showing that he could catch. He caught 18 balls last year in Cam Cameron's offense. He became a better pass blocker, which is crucial, but I think he'll last until the 3rd round, and it's got to be a team that really values a power runner.
One more from the offense. Lineman Trey Turner maybe surprised some by leaving early, declaring for the draft, but 6'3", 300-pounder can move pretty well. Where might he fall this weekend?
I would think that he might go in the 3rd round. I think the Saints would be a place where he might end up. They're looking for a center, and they may even be looking for somebody that can step in at guard in a year or so when they might have to make some changes on the offensive line. So I'm sure he'd love to play in his hometown.
Moving to the defensive side of the ball, Anthony Johnson, another New Orleans native, had a lot of expectations, but really it might be his colleague, fellow defensive tackle Ego Ferguson, who may go ahead of him. Where do you see Ego and Freak Johnson falling?
It's hard to say. I'm saying 4th round on them. That's a high-value position. Everybody needs good defensive tackles. Ego could play in a 3-4. He could play nose guard in a 3-4. He could also play in a 4-3. Anthony fits in better in a 4-3. He's more like some of these past LSU tackles.
Rounding things out, linebacker Lamine Barrow and defensive back safety Craig Lawston. Maybe some late draft selections. 2 talented young men, good leadership players as well, but maybe not that 1st or 2nd round type of talent.
That's right, and Barrow is a nice athlete. He's not the greatest athlete, but I think Barrow has great heart, and it shows on film. I look at him as a 4th round pick. Lawston is lucky that he's in a shallow class. The safety, it's not a lot of safeties, and I know one scout rated him gave him a 6th round value, but said he could go in the 4th or 5th round because there's very, very few safeties.
Should be fun to watch this weekend. The NFL draft is upon us. LSU, a school record 9 Tigers selected last year. We'll see if the 2014 group can match that or perhaps set a new record this year. Jim Klein, Peter, thank you very much.
My pleasure, Chad.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Coming up on our draft game plan, back in the Crescent City, Tulane hopes to be represented by a selection for the first time in 5 years. Meanwhile, meet the Thibodeau High product, who has realistic hopes to become the first name called in New York City.
The Fox 8 Draft Game Plan is sponsored in part by Coyote Blues and Ray Brandt Toyota.
As Tulane continues to build its profile under former Saints receivers coach Curtis Johnson, the Green Wave are garnering more attention from the NFL.
Absolutely, Fred. Last year, Ryan Griffin caught on with the black and gold as an undrafted free agent. This year, the Greenies could see 2 players drafted. Ryan Grant was invited to the Senior Bowl representing Tulane and Mobile for the first time since Jeremy Williams and Troy Kropog in 2009. His training is so intense, get this, Fred, he declined all media opportunities since then. He projects to be a late-round pick.
Wow. And how about Cairo Santos, who's more of a long shot to hear his name actually called, but you never know with kickers. If teams don't feel like waiting around for the undrafted free agency period to begin. If the Brazilian-born Lou Groza Award winner is fortunate enough to get the call, it will be a bit of history.
Last year, Michael Bonatti, a kicker who's still with the Titans this year, he played in preseason, so he was the first Brazilian-born player to play in the NFL, but there has never been a Brazilian-born to play in regular season, so that would be a first, and there's never been a Brazilian drafted, so that would be a first as well.
We'll also be keeping an eye peeled on Thibodeau High product Greg Robinson, 6 feet 5 inches, 330 pounds, a behemoth in a key cog in Auburn's dominant ground attack, and NFL scouts took notice. He almost unanimously is expected to go 2nd overall, and that's pretty much on par with his own expectations.
Just as high as I can go. That's my goal. So I gave it my all. Hopefully the highest, the number 1 pick, hopefully they'll take me.
Another local from SEC country, Ole Miss wide receiver Dante Moncrief, who ranks 3rd in school history in catches, yards, and touchdowns. He played his high school ball at Raleigh High near Hattiesburg and could be available to the Saints on day 2.
And later on in the draft, keep an eye on D'Iberville native Kevin Norwood, Mr. Reliable on a team full of future NFL stars at Alabama. He's a day 3 guy, and that's where the Saints have usually buttered their bread pretty well, at least they have in the recent past.
You are absolutely right, Fred. Still to come on our draft game plan, Akeem Hicks was a draft gem from Canada. We're delving into the guys a little more off the radar who the Saints have taken special interest in.
This is the Fox 8 Draft Game Plan.
I didn't have a clue. I actually never spoke to the Saints on my way out. So when they drafted me, I was just as excited, but it came out of left field. It definitely was a humbling experience to be able to be brought into this organization, to be able to play with the team that I watched since I was a kid. And you know, it's a humbling experience every year, every game, every time you step out on the field.
Indeed, the selection of Akeem Hicks was probably just as surprising to Saints fans who were left scrambling to figure out who the Canadian college football player even was.
Yeah, but you know what? It's worked out just fine in black and gold with big number 76 anchoring the D-line, or at least helping to do so. Perhaps Louisiana Tech product Justin Ellis will be playing next to him this coming season. Projected to be a late-round pick or an undrafted free agent, Ellis has a unique connection with Saints D-line coach Bill Johnson.
He from high school. He from Neville High, and so he, you know, we chop it up like we friends, you know. So he was talking to me about my stance that he wanted me to switch up and stuff. So I think that was a good thing going in.
Okay, we've mentioned small school products all show. Here are the small school products that have actually visited the Saints. Wide receiver Robert Herron from Wyoming, Tim Flanders, running back Sam Houston State, David Fluellen, running back Toledo, center Zach Karen, also from Toledo, Matt Armstrong, center guard from Grand Valley State, Josh Walker, guard from Middle Tennessee State, cornerback Pierre Desir Lindenwood, safety corner Marquestin Huff, also out of Wyoming, safety Jimmy Ward, Northern Illinois, and safety Jonathan Dowling out of Western Kentucky.
So for all the very latest on the draft, we got you a little tuned up here, but you know Fox 8's the place to be. Jim Henderson will be out on Airline Drive with us beginning Thursday at the Saints facility. Of course, analysis and reaction all through the weekend, leading up to one huge recap on Sunday's installment of The Final Play at 10:30. In the meantime, make your voice heard by heading to fox8live.com and voting in our first round survey. What position should the Saints go with at the number 27 overall? Join the Houdat Nation and submit your voice.
Until then, thanks for watching this special edition of the Draft Game Plan, and thanks to all who have contributed. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and check out fox8live.com for more coverage.
Our next newscast begins at 4:30 a.m. Good night.
The Fox 8 Draft Game Plan is sponsored in part by Coyote Blues and Ray Brandt Toyota. Fox 8 is proudly locally owned.